going on, friends? For years, everything in Harley-Davidson's lineup used to be one big compromise. All those years you had to choose between the looks and styling that you wanted, or you had to maybe sacrifice the looks and styling to get a much better handling motorcycle. But now Harley-Davidson has finally stepped up. These have been on the market for a while, and now you can actually finally get some pretty decently priced on the used market. For years, you had to choose between form or function. It was either a Softail or a Dyna. Now, we all love the old school Softail with the Evo and the twin cam, and we all love the Dyna as well. But the problem with the old Softail is that while it looked good, it had that hardtail look, it just didn't handle quite like the Dyna. Now on the Dyna side, a lot of guys didn't like those because of the dual shocks out back or the big old battery box. But now Harley-Davidson has solved both of these problems. Now sadly in 2018 we did lose the Dyna completely, but a lot of the Dyna models actually carried over into the new Softail frame. Well, I say they carried over, they really more or less carried over in spirit, because these new Softail models that used to be Dynas, they are nothing, absolutely nothing like what the Dyna was. They may look kind of the same, but that's about it. That's about where the similarities stop. Now, I know the Milwaukee 8 engine doesn't sound like, it doesn't feel like anything what an Evo or a twin cam was. But truly though, the Milwaukee 8 engine in the new Softails, it's really not all that bad. Please don't forget, if you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. Now the new Softails from 2018 on, these are really a combination of all the good things that were in the FXR, in the Dyna, and in the old school Softail. You get it all in one nice package that actually handles and runs pretty dang well. The new Softails are lighter and more powerful than anything Harley-Davidson ever put out that came before them, but I get it. Those engines, the Milwaukee 8, it doesn't sound or feel like the twin cam or Evo, and honestly for a lot of us, that is a really big deal breaker. Unfortunately, if you're like me and you love that twin shock look that was on the Dyna and the Sportster, I hate to say it, but it's probably a pretty safe bet that that's going to be going away here completely. Even in the touring line, I would look for a new redesigned frame with a mono shock to be coming probably within the next 5 to 10 years, because it is Harley-Davidson. This isn't all bad though, because of what we've seen with the Softail line using the mono shock setup. You get that really good, cool looking old school look of the hardtail, but you also get a modern suspension setup, and it's still hidden. And not to mention, this frame works with everything from the Heritage Softail Classic all the way down to the Street Bob and the Fat Bob and the new Lowrider. Now don't get me wrong, the original Softail motorcycles, these were beautiful bikes. They ran good, they handled well, but the biggest complaint with the old Softail was always the suspension. That suspension design that was on the original Softail, it just wasn't as good as it could have or should have been. Not to mention the Softails, great running cruisers, but they just didn't handle like a Dyna. The good thing about the new Softail chassis is that it's more rigid than it's ever been. This thing is even more rigid than the Dyna and the FXR ever thought they could be. Now with the new Softails and the Milwaukee 8 engine, Milwaukee 8 engines are all rigid mounted now. And with having those engines rigid mounted in the frame, it almost kind of becomes a structural member, not literally, but with it being rigid mounted, it does help tie that frame together. And by doing that, it makes that chassis just that much stiffer, which greatly improves the handling. Now don't get me wrong, I love the look and feel of the old rubber mounting system, but the old rubber mounting system just wasn't exactly the best thing in the world for chassis rigidity and better handling. Not to mention the new Softails, these things are on average about 13 to 20 pounds lighter than their older counterparts, including the Dyna models. Now what this means for you when it comes to the new Softail motorcycles, it doesn't matter if you buy a Heritage Softail Classic, which is more of a touring oriented machine, or you go buy a Lowrider S. You're getting that same exact performance frame, suspension, it's all the same underneath. Now as I mentioned in last week's video, they're going to have their own personalities because of the different wheel and tire combinations, the different forks, the different rake they put into these bikes. Every single one of them is still going to be different. But just know, even if you buy a more touring-oriented Softail, that thing's still got all the goodies of performance and handling underneath you. I really hate to say it, but we put the looks and the feel aside, and we just get down to the brass tacks of handling and power. These things are in leaps and bounds above the old Softail, the FXR, and the Dyna of yesterday. But it gets even better. The suspension is adjustable with the turn of a knob. It's easy to reach. It's not like on a touring bike where you got to pop a saddlebag off. It's not hard to do, but still it's one more step. And not to mention, out front, these things have the Showa dual bending valve technology forks in them. This is basically a race cartridge fork in your Harley-Davidson directly from the factory. This is something we've never seen come out of Harley-Davidson, so I'm definitely not complaining. That is really nice to have on there, and the new M8 Softails just basically have an unparalleled ride versus anything I've ridden out of Harley-Davidson. Now I know even 5 years later, if you're still not 100% sold on the Milwaukee 8 engine, I'm right there with you. It's a good motor, but I'm still on the fence about that motor myself too. Now, Milwaukee 8 Softails, as I mentioned, there's quite a few of them now out on the used market since we got about 5 years worth of them floating around out there. Yes, these are going to cost more than any other Harley-Davidson used out there right now. You're paying for, one, the newness of the bike, also all the technology and all the good stuff that's in those motorcycles now today. But the new Softail is excellent. If you're somebody that doesn't really want to work on your own motorcycle, you just want to buy something that you can just jump on it, ride it, not have to worry about it, have the most power, the latest tech, the new Softail is pretty much right up your alley. Now, when it comes to buying a used Milwaukee 8 Softail, you really want to be careful. Years ago, when they first came out with these, the first couple of years of the new Softails with the M8, they put 107s in a lot of them. You had an option for a 107 or an option for a 114. Now, the 114 was about $1,300 more at the time. Now, obviously, they pretty much dropped the 107 out of the M8 line completely when it comes to the Softails. They're all 114 now. There's only a couple of bikes out there that still have a 107. I didn't believe you could get the Heritage with the 107 anymore, but I know for sure the Softail Standard, that gets the 107, hence the lower price point. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the 107. The 107 is an excellent engine, but if you ride it back to back with the 114, you might be a lot happier with the 114 motor. And the reason why I say you might want to pass over a 107 powered Softail, unless it's just a screaming deal, because if you decide that you want to make that a 114, you're looking at about $1,900 just to buy the kit, plus having labor for having it installed. So you're looking at probably another $4,000 right there, unless you do it yourself. So be sure to price match, price compare very, very carefully, because you don't want to buy a 107 and then dump another $4,000 into it, when you could have just went and got a 114 that may have been the same price or maybe even just a little bit more. It could be even like $500 more. But either way, with a 114 or a 107, you can pop a fresh cam in that, put you a good hot cam in there, get some good chop in the idle, and you will be more than happy with the added power and the much better sound the bike's going to make. Now, the 107 is usually about 10 horsepower and torque off the 114, so keep that in mind if you do decide to buy a 107 and you want to put a cam in it later. Now, whether you like the old school bikes with the rubber mounted engines, the Evos, the twin cams, it's really hard to knock what Harley-Davidson has done with the new Softails. These bikes are done, they're very well thought out. They've been done right. They took the best of every model line and combined it into one new Softail line, which is awesome. If you don't like the looks or the feel of these new Softails, I get it. I completely get it. Once again, I'm still on the fence about the new Softail models. I personally still prefer the older engines, the way they sound and feel, compared to the new Milwaukee 8. Now, you take a Milwaukee 8 that's been built and they pulled the counterbalancers out of them, those things do sound and shake like a twin cam and an Evo. They're not exactly the same because of the 4-valve head, but you get a much better feel of them with the counterbalancers removed out of the engine. So one viewer asked me, what is the difference between the new Fat Boy versus the older Fat Boy? And my response to that really was, absolutely everything's different. The only thing that stayed the same was the name and some of the looks. Other than that, there is no comparison to the new Milwaukee 8 Softail Fat Boy versus the Twin Cam Fat Boy or even the Evo Fat Boy. Even the Evo Fat Boy is still quite a bit different from what the Twin Cam version of the Fat Boy was. So the answer to that was absolutely everything. It's a whole new ballgame on these new Milwaukee 8 Softails. You just absolutely cannot compare them to the older ones from yesterday. So guys, if you're on the fence about the new Milwaukee 8 Softail, just know that these things are some of the best handling, lightest, most rigid Harley-Davidson motorcycles that were ever put out. And not only that, they are comfortable. But anyhow, guys, that's all I've got for you this week. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. But until next week, you guys stay safe on the streets, ride smart, dodge the cars, and I'll catch you guys back here next week with a brand new video. Thanks for watching.